All right, welcome back to another episode of Travel Ball Talk. I'm your host, owner of Play In School, Rich Prado. Today we're heading up to New England to talk with Director of Ops for GBG Northeast, Joe Breen. How you doing, Joe? Welcome to the show, man.
I'm doing excellent. I'm excited to be on the show. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so right out the gate, before we get going too far, I want to point everybody to where they can find you over on social media. It's at Joe Breen RBI. And we'll learn more about what that RBI is all about. And I also want to make note that we've had Michael Garcia-Pera on the show in the past. So if anybody wants to go back and listen to sort of the owner, founder of GBG and, Michael, his family, really, it's the whole family affair over there, go to playinschool.com/Garcia-Pera. Go listen to that. If you want sort of the background. We're going to get into GBG Northeast today, though. Joe, tell me about yourself, and tell me about RBI Academy, GBG Hawks, GBG Northeast, the whole 9 yards.
Yeah, absolutely. So I grew up just north of Boston and played, through high school there, went to prep school in Connecticut, and then went on to play at Stonehill College, which is in Easton, Massachusetts. And while I was at Stonehill, our head coach, Pat Bowen, used to run camps and do clinics with a gentleman by the name of Paul Rapoli, who started Rapoli Baseball Incorporated, which became RBI Academy. And so when I was in college, I spent my summers playing ball and working camps with young kids and working for Coach Bowen. And I guess I did a good enough job where these guys brought me on full time upon graduation. So that was back in 2006. And I've been here ever since. So I've been full time with RBI since I graduated from Stonehill in 2006. And, we've kind of done a lot of different things over the years, and things have kind of developed. Every few years, something new is going on here. And probably for the first 5 years I was here, we never had teams. We just did training, and we had our winter programs, a lot of private lessons, summer camps, clinics, school vacation clinics, all that stuff. Our facility's located right in Foxborough, Massachusetts, which, if anyone pays attention to the NFL at all, it's the home of the Patriots. And so we're all big Patriot fans here, and we're only a few minutes from the stadium, so it's a pretty cool location, especially in the fall. But we really didn't do teams or anything for the first 5 years or so, and then in 2010 we kind of just got to a point where we could not do it. So we started up the teams. We were the RBI Hawks was our first name. We did that for a few seasons. And I mentioned Paul Rapoli, who's the owner of RBI. He came through the Red Sox system at a time when it was, Nomar and Trot Nixon and guys like Lou Merlone. And Paul had some great relationships with those guys throughout the minor leagues. And when Paul was in the minors, he started running his own clinics in the off season, and started pairing up with some guys that ended up making the major leagues, and started running, programs and camps with their names on them. And Paul would do all the operations and had a lot of success doing it. So he started his own training center. And that's kind of what became RBI. And with the relationship with Nomar came the relationship with Michael, Nomar's brother. And Michael's a great guy. We've spent a lot of time together over the years, and he's come out to the facilities in the winter every couple of years, and he's come out in the summer every couple of years. So we're good friends with Michael. And, Michael actually worked a couple camps for us years and years ago. And, he kind of knew that was what he was going to get into when his pro career came to an end. And, when he first started, he reached out to us and kind of said, hey, listen, this is kind of the direction I think I'm going in. I'd love to pick you guys' brain about, how you guys do things. And so, we had some great conversations, myself and Paul and Chris Welch, who's our general manager. We've all been doing this a long time, and we had some great conversations with Michael. And after a few years, Michael started having some pretty good success, and a lot of really, high level talent coming out of Southern California was playing for Michael. And, we were at this crossroads with our program that we were gaining some traction, and, our younger teams were getting a lot of interest, but we weren't quite there with the high school age group. And so, we felt like if maybe we could partner with Michael and Garcia-Pera Baseball Group and kind of change our name and change the brand a little bit, we'd maybe draw in some higher level high school age player. And so we made that switch after, 3 or 4 years of being the RBI Hawks, and we've been that ever since. So we're now, the Northeast branch of GBG, Garcia Parra Baseball Group. And, the rebrand was a good success for us, but, ultimately, like anything, a name can, draw in some interest, but, it's up to us and our staff to deliver. So, I think I'm certainly biased, but I think we've done a pretty good job. And, we're up to about 27 teams now from age 10 to 18. And, we got all sorts of different levels of talents and, kids 10 years old that just love the game, that want to get better. We have a home for them. And we got guys that are, 16, 17, 18-year-old Division I, commits and prospects that, call this their home as well. So that's kind of where we're at today here in 2022. And we're excited about where we've been and where we are, and certainly about where we're going.
That's a pretty thorough background. The thing that I'm kind of most impressed about is you jumped in. Your first and only job out of college has been with the baseball facility. Good for you.
That's it.
That's
yeah,
fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
No shirt and no ties and fancy dress shoes ever.
Nope, that's not me.
Fantastic. Don't want to butcher his name. Paul Rapoli. He's still involved in the day-to-days. He's still hanging with you guys.
Yeah, absolutely, he is. So he's had Paul has 3 children. His oldest, Reese, is just finished his sophomore year at Brown University in the Ivy League. Had a great year. He's got a daughter, Dylan, who's a big lacrosse prospect at Dexter Southfield. She is, I believe, going to be a senior next year, or junior senior, I forget. And he's got a younger son, Nolan, who is 14, going to be a freshman in high school this upcoming year. And Paul and I actually coached together our top 14-year-old team this past year. So I actually coached with Paul and coached his youngest son. So Paul is very, very involved still day to day.
Is Coach Achilles still at Brown? I feel like he is.
Yes. So yes is the answer. Yes. So they've had some assistants kind of come and go over the last few years, but yeah. So
he took over when the previous head coach left, like mid-year. Probably, I don't know what that was, 5 years ago maybe. Grant's a great dude and seems to be doing a good job up there at Brown. And if I'm not mistaken, he's the only coach I saw who really showed any kind of, I don't know the right way to say this. He's the only guy I saw show any sort of passion against having a season canceled due to COVID. He's literally the only guy I saw out of the Ivy League. The Ivy League just said, "Oh, we're just not going to play baseball," and he's like, "But we're here to play baseball." Not to get into that, but I've known Grant a while, so he's a good dude, and I was glad to see him. Yeah,
he definitely wanted to fight for his kids, and that's, I think, as anybody who's played the game, when you have a head coach that's willing to go to bat for you, that's number one.
And no ripping on anybody else, but like I'm sure they were behind the scenes fighting. Yeah, he was the only one I saw out publicly who took a stance in a public fashion, which I think kind of means something. So I'm glad I'm glad they got back to baseball this year. Finally.
Yeah, exactly. Wow.
Anyway, enough about that. But so Rapoli comes up through the Red Sox organization. He must have been pretty good. He's hanging with some good ball players. He's buddies with Nomar, and one thing leads to another. They connect, and GBG simultaneously is sort of gaining ground in Socal, right? Like talk about a target-rich environment, man. There's a good baseball player on every corner down there. But that was sort of almost logical? Like, could you see that coming from a long way off, or did that sneak up on you a little bit? Just like that creation of that relationship.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was just kind of natural. I mean, he was doing what he was doing. We were doing what we were doing. We knew where we were strong and where we needed improvement in our program. And we were gaining enough traction that we had interest, but, we just felt like we were doing a great job and we were just missing, one or two pieces to the puzzle. Mm-hmm. And we all just kind of felt like the Michael and the GBG brand, what that could potentially bring to our existing program could get us over the hump. And I think it did. I think, looking back, I think it certainly got us, over that hump that we were hoping to get to with some of those, higher level high school players and got some good attraction there. And, and then at the end of the day, it was up to us to kind of maintain it and to grow it. And, that's kind of where we're at today. But yeah, it was all kind of really, really good timing between Michael, gaining traction and getting his program to where it was and gaining a lot of recognition on a national scale, and us being local, regional, and being able to kind of combine those two things for sure.
Just being around this thing for so long, and, I know guys who are sort of what I would describe as sort of the top of the food chain, and then I know guys who are not at the top of the food chain, and there is this inflection point where at that certain age, like your teams are really, really good, and at this certain age, there's a hump. I think you almost described it the same way. You got to get over this hump, because all of a sudden, like that guy who's that, it's usually like that 13, 14 age group where they see a shiny object, they see a logo, right? They see this they see this brand across the way. And they know that logo and that brand does X, Y, and Z. And so there's definitely this inflection point about you got to keep some of those guys, because like keeping those guys is going to help us keep this other guy who's going to help us keep this other guy. And it's going to help us put a really good competitive team on the field. And so the idea was like, hey, let's this is that moment where we're rebranding and having this partnership, this sort of cross-continental partnership with a known name. Especially, I mean, yeah, he's Socal, right? But I gotta imagine in the shadows of Fenway.
Yeah.
It's sort of a big deal, isn't it? Having that Garcia Parra name attached to you is not, and not that everybody runs around saying, Garcia Parra baseball, but like it's a big deal.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a case to be made that it actually is more well known in New England, especially with the parents of players this age, right?
Yeah.
There's no mom or dad around right now that doesn't know who Nomar Garcia Parra is, and we may have more pull with the Garcia Parra name in New England than they might do in Southern California at times.
That you might be right. You might be right. That's
so it's certainly a well recognized name around here. That's for sure.
Now I'm not necessarily, I'm on your website, and it does specifically, because I think GBG could be seen as pretty like almost like generic. That could be, any word that starts with G. But you do have front and center Garcia Parra. So yeah, good on you, man. Side note, is Nomar still in New England, or did he head back to Socal? Do you know?
No, yeah, he is not here. Yeah, he does not have any residence here at all. Yeah.
Yeah, because he ended up. What did he? So he left. This is us going down memory lane for us old folks. So he left. Eventually left Boston. I think he went to L.A. for a little while. And did he? Yes. Did he go somewhere after that?
Yeah, Oakland.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So he played a few years with the Dodgers, and I believe his last year is with the Oakland A's.
Gotcha.
And, I know his return to Fenway was with the A's.
Gotcha. Nomar, if you're listening, I know you might be tuned into this. Forgive me for not knowing your entire career. I grew up a Mets fan. So anyway, I digress. Well, this is pretty cool. So, coming out of the New England area, one of the things I'm always sort of curious about is like how a club like preps for, goes into, and thinks about planning their summer schedule. And I'll tell you why I think about that. We just had on Reed Nomura from the Hawaii Tigers. It's a big deal for him to find games. Okay, so right,
I would imagine
he has to bend over backwards to do some magic to get his players over here to compete. Meanwhile, you're within driving distance of, like, I don't know, what's the Boston metro area have, 10 million people or something? So like, what are y'all doing on, like, just from that, call it that 16 and 17U level, as far as rounding out your schedule for the summer? Like, what's that look like?
Yeah, I mean, it's really not very tough. It's we have the New England baseball complex is in Northborough, Massachusetts, and that opened up, probably about 6 years ago now. And so that's a 3 turf field complex, and that started, local tournament play that was very similar to what we would get when we would travel out to, Diamond Nation in New Jersey, or Baseball Heaven out in Long Island.
Yeah.
Now it was kind of right in our backyard. It's right up the highway for about 40 minutes from our facility, and we're at a complex. So that certainly helped. And then, we still do our fair share of travel. So we'll still go down south to, Georgia, Florida, do some perfect game tournaments. But there's also a lot of local clubs that we have good relationships with that, is easy to book. And then we have the league we are a part of, which is mainly, 10 to 15 years old, is where the league kind of has its most participation. There's still a 16, 17, 18-year-old division of that league that, gives the kids some weekend doubleheaders and playoffs and some meaningful baseball that's not tournament play. And, I think sometimes the schedule gets a little bit watered down with tournament play. And, I think one of the more disappointing things to see is, when you get a team that, wins a tournament, and it's like the celebration is like they just, won a Wednesday night game that meant nothing. It's like, man, that's when and you're playing too many tournaments, and you guys just won the whole thing. You went 6-0 in 4 days. Like, that's an accomplishment. Good for you guys. And the celebration's kind of very minimal. So
ho hum.
Yeah, exactly. And I just think the more meaningful baseball games these kids can play that have a little pressure to them, and where you feel like you accomplish something when you win that game, then I think that's a good thing for these kids and their development. So, that's where we really like the league too.
It feels like I've heard a lot of coaches who've come on here talk about the idea of more league play. During the summer, it feels like what could be a good sort of combination would be that weekend, that Friday, Saturday, Sunday showcase sort of environment, combined with maybe a Monday to Thursday league play. And that, it gets kind of tough with pitchers in there. So maybe it's not, maybe you're not playing league play 4 days a week. Maybe it's 2 days a week or something. I don't know. Maybe it's Tuesday and Wednesday league play where it's in town, no travel, but you're still getting lots of reps. You're getting tons of at bats. You're getting put in situations, and it's for real, right? Which is very different than going into the facility for a round of BP. But on the flip side, go ahead.
I was just saying, I think a big difference here between the New England region and a lot of the other regions is, like, our players still play for their town, and they take a lot of pride in that. So they're playing for, Foxborough Little League or Foxborough Babe Ruth or something
in the summertime.
Like I think, yeah.
Up to what age?
Especially 12 and down is where it's still very, very much a part of their baseball schedule. 13, 14 is where it starts to get kind of iffy, and then 15 and up, it's really not part of it. But there is, Legion baseball that some kids, depending on their town and their Legion situation, they have those as options as well. So, I think one of the tough parts is, I think a lot of kids in New England still take a lot of pride in playing and competing for their town. And I think that's something that's special. But, I think that's the stuff that can get in the way a little bit of that weeknight league play. So I think there's a little bit more of that, where I think other parts of the country from people I've spoken with is, these guys are in just tournaments like that. There's no league, there's no anything.
Correct.
Tournament. And, like I was kind of alluding to before, it kind of gets watered down to the point where it's like, we lost, we won. And it's the same feeling, and it should be different.
Totally. Yeah. The at the older age groups, the American Legion thing has sort of shifted in my area, where it's still, gosh, you know what? I could be wrong. I think it's still out there. I can't even speak with any sort of confidence, but at least a few years ago, it was still a thing, but it served a very different purpose. It wasn't that 16, 17-year-old going out there and hoping the coach from whatever college would show up to see you play. It wasn't that at all. It was more like the kid who just graduated high school can play there, so he can stay sharp, or a local kid coming home from college could come and play, if he's not going to go and play in some college summer league. So it served a really different purpose. Ironically, I had a friend tell me recently, whose kid's really good, that he's like, if he signs before next summer, he's just going to play Legion, so he can just get reps and reps and reps with zero travel, no having to worry about the just the whole thing, right? The good parts are good, but the less than good parts are less than good. You know what I mean? Like the hotels, the eating out at Wendy's at 11:30 at night after a late game. That part of it can obviously get a little bit annoying. Hey, I'm looking at the clock and we're moving fast here. I want to get into just at least a couple of those questions I sent you. The first one's always sort of just kind of a fun one, and I need to make sure I ask this correctly, because the question used to be what book, but then I sort of edited that. What book or movie or website or resource do you think that every coach should be learning from? Is there something that you're recommending to your friends, your coaching buddies, or even your players to look at and learn from?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's, you can sit there and study the game of baseball and strategies, techniques, over and over and over again. But, I think for me in the last, 5, 6, 7 years, for me, it's been more about the mental game. And I think, a guy that I follow a lot and I read a lot and I listen to audiobooks. I have an hour commute to the facilities here. So his voice is always on in my car, is Brian Kane.
Okay.
He does the mental performance, and I think he's great. He's a ball of energy. He clearly has a lot of passion. And he's just talking a lot about, how athletes can not just perform physically, but mentally. And I think, you get to certain levels and that becomes the separator is being able to deal with failure and being able to deal with adversity. And I think if you don't have a strong head on your shoulders, you're only going to get to a certain point, and your body, it can only take you so many places, but your mind can take you a lot further. And I think that's something when I started coaching high school ball, years ago, it was one of the first things that I felt really propelled our teams. That was a huge difference for us when we started kind of introducing some of the mental game stuff. And I just think it's all about the language you use with your team and the language you're using with your players, trying to keep things, as positive as possible while also being constructive with your feedback. And that would be the number one for me, is Brian Kane's mental performance. He's got podcasts, books, audiobooks, all that good stuff.
He's got all the things.
Yeah, so I think that would certainly be the number one recommendation I have.
Is there a number two you want to mention quickly, or no?
Yeah, I'd say a book I read years ago is, it's a kind of funny being in Patriot Town here, but Pete Carroll's Win Forever book.
Okay.
I love that one. I read that right before I started coaching high school baseball that winter going into my first season. And I found it extremely valuable. I think, he had, what I took away from it mostly was just having systems in place and kind of coming up with the system for your team and how practices were going to run and, sticking to your standards, and then also being able to edit those things as you see fit. If you have the same plan, 12 years in a row, you're not adapting, right? And so I think being able to have some things that are concrete, black and white, but also knowing that maybe every off season you're going to have to make some adjustments. And I thought that book was excellent. I always kind of come back to that one every once in a while.
I love the way you said that. Maybe you lifted that from the text about editing. I've been thinking a lot about this concept lately, where oftentimes we put so much pressure on a single decision. It could be a big decision, it could be a little decision, and what I have to remind myself is, most of these decisions are totally reversible, right? So, like, you could go down a path, like you were describing with Coach Carroll, and just make an edit. Like, it doesn't, okay, you write it down on paper to start the season. Well, you get 3 games in, and the thing is not working perfectly.
Yep.
Make a change. You can reverse the decision. And I'm trying to, like, not only remind myself about it, but, like, share that sentiment with other people. Like, look, it's not that big a deal. Like, make the decision today, and if it doesn't work for you tomorrow, change the decision. It's okay.
Yeah.
Like,
and I think with the age that we are working with here too, 14-year-olds in the year 2022 are very different than 14-year-olds when I started here in 2006.
Yeah.
Just what these kids' lives are like and what they've gone through. And it's just, you're talking to 2 completely different humans. They might be the same age, but if you're having the same conversations, 16, 17 years later, it's not going to stick with these kids.
Do you feel like the kid today just has so much more information than the kid, 15 years ago?
Yeah, probably too much.
Too much.
I think they're filled with information, and I think, you have so much information that you spend your entire time trying to process the information instead of acting on it.
Yeah.
And I think that's I do it.
I'm guessing you're not just talking. I'm guessing you're not just talking about baseball information.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just, we all do it, right?
Yeah.
You want to have all the right information so that you can make the best decision or the most educated decision. And when you just continue to fill with information, you just take away from time to act and fail and learn and adjust. And, you're better off just, coming up with a potential, an educated decision, act on it, and see what the results are and go from there, instead of just constantly spending more time to make one decision.
And go back another 10 years before that, when I was coming through, I didn't know anything about anything.
Right.
The opposite, the absolute opposite of today's kid. Hey, I'm going to skip ahead. I'm curious. You weren't around when Coach Rapoli opened up RBI, but you were part of sort of the rebrand, and so I think you might have some, something to speak into this. The question is, what's one piece of advice you'd give someone who's just starting a travel team, an organization, or maybe even opening a facility? You've been in the facility now since the day you graduated, so you definitely have experience. What's something you tell that person who's thinking about launching something?
Yeah, there's a reason people get into this industry, and I genuinely feel 98% of that is for good reason, right? There's very few guys, and it might seem like it's not this way, but there's very few people who just do this because they think there's a paycheck behind it. People get into coaching and teaching and educating because they're passionate about it, and something happened in their life that they wish they had that person around. And I think the best piece of advice I would have to people going down this path is just simply always remember why you got into it in the first place. And I think just sticking to what you feel is right by the player and their family. And I think when you work the inside out, like the business side takes care of itself. Is if you're constantly making decisions based on what you feel is right by that player and their family, the results will come. And I think, sometimes those conversations, what you feel is right by them, they may not agree with, and that's okay. But you got to be willing to have those conversations, and you got to be willing to, again, consistently do what you feel is right by the kid and by their family. And I think ultimately, if you do that, and you do that far more often than you don't, then I think you'll have success.
That's awesome. Very good. All right, let's talk a little bit about travel baseball. What one change could be made to travel baseball that would have the biggest positive impact? Right, if I gave you that magic wand, is there something you could do to make a positive impact?
I think so. I mean, I think that, and this may be a little out of the box here, but I think a lot of what is wrong with travel baseball and the connotations behind it is it's kind of a trickle down, right? Is these kids are being asked to verbally commit, all that stuff to these schools at an age where they have absolutely no idea what they want. And I think because of that, it kind of puts programs like ours in this odd place where it becomes what the kids want, it becomes what the parents expect, and it's just not right. And I've had people reach out to me and say, hey, could you recommend some of your top 13 and 14-year-olds for this huge showcase we're doing? Ugh. And honestly, my answer is no. I won't do it. I don't want to do it. I don't think it's right. I don't believe in it. And the sad part is like, other kids are doing it, and our players will see that and say, well, how come this kid, how come this kid's doing it? We played against him, and I feel like I'm as good, and it's just like, well, because again, I don't think it's right for you and your family to do that. I don't think it's necessary. So it comes back to my advice for others is like, I'm not going to do something. I'm not going to recommend something I don't think is right. And maybe people disagree with me, but I just think it's that trickle down effect of these kids at 14 are seeing classmates of theirs commit to some, big time Division I program. And they think that that's what should happen. And it shouldn't. I mean, these kids absolutely have no idea what they want when they're, at 14 for when they're going to be, 19, 20, 21, 22. And I just think if there was ever a way to eliminate that from the conversation of these big time colleges and not allowing that, it would help programs like ours, because then we could focus all of our energy on the development and putting kids in positions to succeed and fail and not worry about that type of stuff. And I just feel like that conversation is getting younger and younger and younger, and I just don't feel it's right. I agree with you. It's kind of mind-boggling that, like, what's the most high-stake decision a 14-year-old has made? Like, I mean, it should be what topping they're getting on their pizza, as well,
right? Like, but. No, but like that's not far from reality. Maybe what like Nike or Reebok for what kind of shoes to get? Right. Think about that. They've made zero high stakes decisions, and then suddenly with zero practice, zero reps, they're put in a position to make one of the most high-stake decisions, arguably, of their entire life, at an age where, like, it's a profound thing. It's a profound thing. So on the one hand, I say I agree with you, but on the other hand, like, how do you get there? And I've sort of come to the conclusion personally that I'm not necessarily like against the early commits. What I'm mostly against is the early decommits. All those decommits that are a result of making the wrong decision, right? When it becomes clear,
one creates the other.
When you correct, and I've mentioned this 100 times on the podcast. It could be with the right, and it wouldn't take very hard rules, but with the right set of rules from the NCAA, 95% of it would clear itself up. Like if you just said, "Hey, coach, the kid, listen, he's got to sign, right? Like forget this verbal stuff. If you want to sign a 12-year-old, sign a 12-year-old, but sign his name on the line. You can offer this money, but you can only offer this money once. And if you pull it, or if that kid goes elsewhere, that money's gone, right? It evaporates. You only get to offer it. Offering it is the equivalent of spending it, right? So if we made that rule, and vice versa, like I think the kid has to have some skin in the game. If the kid makes a commitment, and honestly now at the transfer portal, this next idea doesn't even work. But remember back in the day when they had to sit a year when they transferred, right? So if a kid commits and then he decommits, you would have to sit a year or go down a level. So if you commit to a D1 and you don't want to go there, that's fine, but you got to go down a level. And that sounds outrageous in this moment of basically free agency thanks to the transfer portal. But if you implemented some version of what I just said, that left-hander who's 13, who throws 90, who's 6'3", he would still get offered and he would still commit. That's fine. But that 14-year-old who throws 77 would not get offered. And we've seen those. Like we've seen the ridiculous early offers, and it's insanity. Like those, I think but the NCAA doesn't care. If anybody at the NCAA hears this, pass it on to the powers that be. They simply don't. It's not obviously they don't care about this topic. But like yes, I agree with you, but I come at it from a little bit of a different tack. I think a little different approach.
No, I would say if there was any other, I know that's a bit obscure and kind of a far out idea, but I would say if I had to pick something that was like just a black and white, change this today. It would be no team should ever play more than 2 games in a day.
Yeah, have you ever seen a big league game? A big league team play more than 2 in a day?
You barely see them play more than 1.
I wonder why, man.
It's just I think a lot of these overuse injuries and stuff. Like there's all these pitch count rules and stuff. But let's say facts. The pitch count rules have been in effect for over a decade right now, and it's not stopping anything. And I think a lot of it is becoming these kids are they're on a field for 3 straight days, 2 games a day. The third day, they're making a run in the tournament, and they're playing 3-4 games. I mean, these kids are spent, and their body's not ready for it.
It's bananas. It's bananas that we're asking these 15, 16-year-olds to do something you would never ask a full-grown man to do. It's beyond bananas. And some of that, I think, like here's the way I'll say it. I've asked this question, 50 times to 50 different coaches, and there's some good replies, good answers, and some of them are like, they're like things that coach can implement today. And so I say, I challenge you to do that thing you just told me. Well, here's my challenge to you. If you're put in that position this fall or next summer, where you're in an event and you're making a run, and to win the thing, you got to play 4 games in a day, I challenge you to just say no. Hey guys, we're good. Like you're in that position. That's a very tough decision to make. But like when you run out of arms, you run out of arms. You know what I mean? Yeah. And sure, you got this kid who hasn't thrown an inning this year, but you put him in. Well, talk about a recipe for disaster. That's begging for this kid to blow his arm out. And when you put him over there, that means you got to put somebody else over in his spot. And now that kid's susceptible to injury, right? So it's like it's this crazy trickle down. So that's my challenge, man. Like, hey, if you're put in that position, be ready to make a tough decision.
And I think it's hard too because we've tried to make adjustments on our own end with our rosters. Is going a few extra guys on a roster to be able to accommodate that, to try to avoid it. So, because what's hard is it's more difficult turning to your dugout and telling a bunch of kids that earned their way into a semifinal game that we're not playing.
Of course.
It's much easier to tell the tournament director.
Yeah.
But it's hard to tell the kids we're no longer competing,
Yeah.
because they'll want your head on a stick, right?
Or not only the kids, the parents will go ballistic on you.
Sure. Oh, absolutely. And I think being able to adjust your rosters to be able to accommodate that is part of it. But, it's one of the toughest balances we have is, you need the roster to be able to compete in deep into tournaments. But at the same time, if the team has a tough weekend and you don't make it out of pool play, well, now you got 4 or 5 guys that have barely seen the field, and now you got to do something with those guys to continue their development too. So, it becomes kind of a tough balancing act. And I think we've done a good job of it over the years, but there's certainly some weekends that we're sitting there going, man, this is a tough spot to be in.
It is, it's like you want to take a 25-man roster to the big events, but but you might not need them. Yeah.
Exactly.
You hope you do need them, right? Like that's, you got to get through pool play basically.
Right.
But like most of the time, those teams that win, you look at their roster and you're like, holy cow, they got twice as many guys as us.
Well, that's usually the championship picture is taken in, panoramic version on your iPhone. They got to scroll all the way over.
Yeah,
so.
Yeah, you got to use the GoPro and get that fisheye lens on there.
Yeah, exactly.
That's very funny. Hey man, listen, I appreciated you coming on with me today. We're right about the time where I said I'd let you go.
Sure.
Do you have any parting shots in the event that there's anybody listening besides my mother and maybe your family?
No, you know what? The only thing I would say is to any player that's in our program, past, present, future, parents, I hope that all of these people do know that at the end of the day, we work our butts off over here. We got a bunch of good guys involved, and we're always going to go to bat for our kids and our families, and we're going to keep busting our butt and working as hard as we can for them, and we're nothing without them, and we don't have these facilities and jobs and any of this stuff without their support. And, they're always going to be our number one, and we look forward to continuing to do our best to deliver for them and hopefully, achieve their baseball goals, but also just give them a darn good baseball experience. And we're going to keep trying to do that to the best of our ability.
Well put, man. Hang on 2 seconds. I'm going to stop the recording there, but don't hang up yet.